Well, friends, lovers, thank you for joining us. Today is Sunday, January 19th, 2025, and this is 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir. I'm Robert.
I'm Amy.
And you know who you are. And if you're watching live, you are right where you ought to be. Thank you for joining us. Again, today is Sunday, January 19th, the 19th day of this, your best year yet, 2025. A nice round number if you're counting by fives, and I like it. After today, you've got 346 days left to make this your best year yet. Christmas is right around the corner in 340 days. I'm going to keep celebrating Christmas. I'm going to do the Ebenezer Scrooge thing and keep Christmas past, present, future, and all throughout the year. Halloween, some of us are more about Halloween all year, 285 days.
Yay.
And Valentine's Day is in just 26 days. If you are celebrating that, whether with a sweetheart or just with your own sweet self.
Yeah, or having Galentine's
Day, that's right.
Or Halloween, which is second Halloween.
Halloween.
Yes.
Halloween. Galentine's, I guess you celebrate that with your gal friends. I don't know, it always sounded to me like you celebrate that with a gallon of some adult beverage, but however you celebrate Galentine's Day, excuse me, let me get a sip of my coffee here. You do you. Now, show prep. I started doing show prep early and forgot if you do show prep on the day before, then you're on the day segment. You need to fix that. So, on this date yesterday, January 18th, 1919, the post-World War I Peace Conference begins in Paris. I love the idea of a Paris conference. I could use a Paris Peace Conference myself. I had some people out there I need to make peace with, or at least find some peace regarding. I think that's what we're going to be talking about today. But really on this date, in other words, January 19th, the next day, well, you go back 4 years, that's when the first air raid was. First air raid on Britain. Link to the information about the interesting story in the show notes. One of the things that was interesting to me, the Bastichis who came to attack Great Britain dropped bombs from Zeppelins. 2 Zeppelin aircraft. You know, they eventually figured out, the Hindenburg was a clue, that flying a big bag of hydrogen around, not a good idea. And the idea of doing that in wartime especially, what the hell were they thinking? But
War is hell.
War is hell. You know, Jonathan Yuan had just posted in his Philosophy You Needed forum a video about the current surrender. The peace agreement between Israel and Gaza, Hamas, whatever you want to call them. What a disaster. And that's why it's interesting to me to look back on this date, both in which the beginning of World War II celebrated on this date and the end of World War II celebrated yesterday. Yeah. But we're going to keep it light today. Well, we got a little bit more of the peace process to talk about. No, neither one of those peace processes. No, more peace of mind. But first of all, happy National Popcorn Day. And I got to bring my chat up here. I'm a little late in getting my chats running here, but I want to know, assuming you're a fan of popcorn, and I know that you are because everybody is, what's your weapon of choice? When you do popcorn, do you get an old pot, a big gallon pot or a stock pot, put a 1/4 inch of oil in the bottom, throw a bunch of raw curd? Do you do it the old style? Do you use an air popper and then add on your own preferred butter, salt, whatever you like? Do you do microwave popcorn? What do you do? What's your weapon of choice when it comes to popcorn? And are you a fan of movie theater popcorn? You know, I remember there was a period where some people got turned off to that when they found out, you know, the polyunsaturated oils that were used. And then, ironically, the palm oils that were used. And, of course, nowadays, seed oils are the enemy, so it's complicated. So tell me in the chat, I'm going to take a second here to refresh my Facebook page. That Facebook chat, you can never bring it up until after the show starts, which is a little bit frustrating. There we go. Yes, and the writer Jim is in the chat. Good to see you on the Facebook side. Lots of people on YouTube. What do we got going on there?
There's a conflict of opinion with regard to Jimmy Page and whether or not he was a good guitarist.
Jimmy Page was an amazing guitarist, but I get why some people criticize him. Having seen Les Zeppelin a couple weeks ago and watching the person doing his role, playing guitar, not just guitar, but with the bow, with the 12-string, with all the different things Jimmy Page did.
But did he play a theremin? That's the question.
Yeah, did he actually play a theremin like she did? The one thing I will say about Jimmy Page, he could be sloppy. And I think he was an accomplished enough guitarist that a few more takes and maybe he would have got it right. Mm. But if you listen to, a number of Led Zeppelin recordings, listen to the guitar on Hot Dog on the last Zeppelin album. Well, the last one released while they were together on that last Led Zeppelin album, In Through the Outdoor. Hot Dog has got some of the sloppiest Jimmy Page guitar on it. And some of it you can tell is intentional. He's kind of playing legato. He's playing behind the beat. But some of it is just sloppy. And he would do that on other albums too. And again, being the producer of the records, if he didn't want it there, it wasn't going to be there. No, I think it was intentional. But when he played well, he played things that very few other people can play the way that he did. Add to that how inventive he was. Not just with the songs he wrote, but with the different instrumentation, playing things like the guitar ron, the little hurdy-gurdy that you apply to your guitar strings, or even just playing with a bow, but melodically. And also, alternate tunings. Listen to Led Zeppelin 3 for a bunch of those, and, listen to the Rain Song, my favorite Led Zeppelin song. One song I still haven't learned how to play, or at least not play well. So did Jimmy Page suck? No. Could he be very sloppy at times? Yes. Did anybody out there match what he did in terms of creative output? Very few, if any. So I give him all the props in the world. And on top of which, if you watch his interviews, he seems like a genuinely nice, decent guy. He's like the kind of guy you'd want to meet.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's more a kind of guy you'd hang out with, but I'd like to meet him. I'd like to talk to Jimmy Page.
Yeah, didn't he get into, I don't know what... some kind of sciences? I forget. I'm trying to look it up here.
He studied Aleister Crowley, and it kind of informed some of the lyrics that him and Robert Plant were playing with. But no, I don't think he was really, really crazy or anything.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was just he actually considered a career in biological research, and he even interviewed for a job as a lab assistant.
Yeah, well, he's a smart guy. I don't know if he was Brian May smart, who has a PhD in astrophysics.
Oh, that's who I'm thinking of. I'm getting them confused.
There we go.
Okay.
There we go. No, the great thing, one of the fun facts about Jimmy Page, the folks talking about him probably know this, but look up all of the songs he played on. No, I don't mean Led Zeppelin. He was a session musician.
Yeah.
Before he joined, before he put together Led Zeppelin. And of course, he played briefly with the Yardbirds too, but he is playing on a bunch of records you wouldn't guess that he played on. Kind of mainstream or easy listening stuff. Did he play with Chris
Squire, or no?
He did.
Okay, yeah.
One of the first times that Yes broke up, after the Tormato album. Oh, excuse me, no, after Drama, I think. Ellen White and Chris Squire got together with Jimmy Page, thought about doing a project. They even brought in Robert Plant, but he wasn't really available for it. But there are these sessions, you can listen to them, they're on YouTube. The band was called XYZ. Well, to the extent it had any name at all, that's what they called the project. Zeppelin. So that makes sense.
Yeah, XYZ.
Yeah, XYZ.
That's good.
And then they're just rough demos. Some of them eventually became songs. You Yes fans, we're getting into esoterica here, but just real quick, you Yes fans out there, if you know the album Magnification and the song Can You Imagine, the one song where Chris Squire is singing lead vocals, that was originally came out of those XYZ sessions.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So that you can find demos of that with Jimmy Page playing with... So there you go.
There, the more you know, everybody.
And the people who are not into this are like, I don't know if I want to keep listening. What else is going on in the chat?
Well, Greg is giving a vote for the white cheddar popcorn. Comes in the 42-pack chip boxes. Okay, cool. Let's see, any other popcorn?
That. Well, I like that logic of, what I want comes in a 42-pack. And who's going to buy 42 little bags of popcorn? But why not? If you like it and you want to have those on the shelf, So I like that kind of creative thinking. That's good.
I'll just say that I can give you my secret recipe for my popcorn that
Well,
I most love.
what is your popcorn of choice?
Okay, so it's Pop Secret unpopped kernels that you buy, you know, so it's
Buy a jar of them, okay.
raw kernels. And you put it into an air popper.
Air popper.
And then you melt probably about 2 tablespoons or more, depending on what you like, of real butter.
2 tablespoons of real butter.
No margarine, real butter. And yeah, and then you you get a big bowl, you pop the popcorn, and then, you keep layering on the butter while shaking it, so layer it and then shake it, layer it and shake it. That's about all you really need. If you, the salt that I prefer is the kosher salt.
Coarse or regular?
Well, I don't know, whatever kind of kosher salt you have.
Okay.
Or whatever salt you like, really. You can put, I've been putting like everything bagel seasoning on popcorn. That's pretty good. That's real fun. It doesn't really stick very well. Sometimes, though, you can put cayenne pepper, a little bit of that on there. It's really good. Yeah, so you can do a lot with all of it. And my preferred way of eating popcorn, sometimes, not all the time, is I take each individual kernel and then I eat the crusty stuff, all the hull off of it first, and then I take the soft, puffy part, put that into a cup. I know this is really strange. And then I do that as I go through the entire bowl of popcorn, and then afterwards, I just eat the round, fluffy bits just by themselves, maybe 3 at a time. And it's so much fun, and I just love the experience. So there you are. If you're interested in delve into more deeper layers of popcorn eating.
That demonstrates a profound wisdom. Very similar to the fact that I always back my car into a parking spot. In fact, even in my garage, I always back the car into the garage.
We're like Batman around here. We go backwards.
And the reason why that is profound and wise is it's forward thinking. You are taking action. You're saving the best for last. You are preparing for the future.
Yeah.
You are wise indeed. I can totally get behind that. 102%. Christopher Smith in the chat is filling in our gaps on Jimmy Page here, and says he's the one playing guitar in the Goldfinger movie theme. Very, very cool. Owned Crowley's house. He actually owned Aleister Crowley's house, I believe that, and used to own the largest occult bookstore in London.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I believe that, too. That makes sense.
Because why not?
Yeah. Yeah, as Greg says, let the fluffy part melt on your tongue.
Yes.
For the record, I'm a microwave popcorn guy, and it actually, my microwave popcorn of choice, Amy introduced me to,
yes.
Even though it's no longer her favorite.
It's okay.
Pop Secret home style butter.
Yes.
If you've never tried, and there are a lot of brands that will do a quote unquote home style or something like that. If you've never tried it, do try Pop Secret home style microwave popcorn.
Yes.
It's better than, I've tried them all. Trust me, I've tried them all, and they are I don't want the movie theater butter where it just tastes like whatever the butter chemical is, they saturated it with that. No, I don't want that. I want it just right. I want the, the baby bear version. The Papa Bear too big, Mama Bear too small, or whatever. That's the one. Okay, National Popcorn Day is today. So,
yeah. Oh, and we do have another vote here for caramel popcorn, which is always great. Just about anything. Oh, and I need to say also, just as a technicality, when you're dealing with trying to melt butter in the microwave, let me just give you a little hint or a little tip. Very important. You put it into a good, not like a tiny Pyrex thing, but like a good deep sort of, maybe even like a coffee mug. You heat it up in like only by 15-second increments, and then you stir it in between. Otherwise, the butter will explode. I also do put like a paper towel over it just in case there is any explosion. But that's how you deal with that in the microwave. It has to no more than 15 seconds at a time, especially if it's been sitting out on the counter and it's softer. So there you are.
Yes. And the chefs out there will know that. You don't want the butter so hot that it separates. And some of your popcorn gets all the oil and some of your popcorn gets all the creamy good part. No, you don't want that. So yes, very, very good. And okay, I'm going to move on real quick, although there's more in the chat I need to read. Because it's Dolly Parton's birthday. She's 79 years old today.
Oh my God, I didn't know this.
Here she comes again. Yeah, it's Dolly Parton's 79th birthday.
She's the best. I hope she lives to 120 because she's such a bright spot.
A total sweetheart. Also, birth dates. So these are people who are no longer with us. Auguste Comte. Or Auguste Comte, for you Americans. No, Auguste Comte, the philosopher who not only coined the term sociology, he's also the French guy who coined the term altruism.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And born on this day, 1798. 1798. So, we consider him one of the villains out there for being pro-altruism and even giving us the term. But, at least he clarified matters. He gave us the language to use. Yeah. And it's not like there wasn't already tons and tons and tons of advocacy of self-sacrifice out there because, come on, religion. So,
yeah.
So whether you want to celebrate him or not, this is the birth date of the late and arguably great Auguste Comte. It's also Edgar Allan Poe's birthday. He was born 1809, lived only to 1849, as we've actually mentioned him before. Short life, 40 years old, hardcore, but somebody who lived an even shorter life than the 59 years of Auguste Comte or the 40 years of Edgar Allan Poe. It is the birthday or birth date of the late Janis Joplin. Yes, one of a member of the 27 Club.
Yeah.
Only got 27 years. I wish she had lived. I wish she was here today. I wish we had gotten more out of Janis before she did her son. Now, if you're not a Janis Joplin fan, and we have a lot of objectivists in the audience, and I have heard objectivists talk about Janis Joplin in tones less than reverential. Janis Joplin was great. She was like Jimmy Page's on guitar. She was kind of sloppy, but also really, really good. So, good day to put on some Janis Joplin tunes. Put on Peace My Heart, or if you want something light and fluffy, put on Mercedes-Benz. Oh, Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes-Benz? It's just charming, charming stuff. So rest in peace, Janis Joplin. And that's all I've got for On This Date. Under shameless self-promotion, what are we listening to this week? Anything special you're listening to this week?
I rediscovered a band. It's really good. Late 80s, I believe. Straight edge hardcore band. I think that they're straight edge. Some of the band members came out of Minor Threat. But the band name is Dag Nasty.
Dag Nasty.
Dag Nasty. Sort of like Dagny, but Dag Nasty, like hardcore Dagny.
Dagny, but the opposite, yeah.
So, if you look them up, I think they only released one album. I may be wrong. But they have some songs that really were kind of objectivist-y. Just songs that... For number one, they were clearly sung, so you could really understand what the singer was saying. He was very articulate in his singing. It was hardcore, but it was kind of polished. And there's even vocal harmonies in it. But, there's songs like Values Here and Can I Say, and just songs that are about having self-confidence, like... taking ideas seriously, questioning what you want out of life, really interesting, almost self-helpy sort of hardcore punk rock lyrics. So yeah, if you're looking for something new that you have never heard before, that I'm sure
Dag Nasty.
Dag Nasty.
Well, dang. but hopefully not dang nasty. Well,
It's
very good. Very good. What I've got under what we're listening to and complete shameless self-promotion, because what I have listed, if you look at the show notes on YouTube, you will see 100 episodes, lessons learned and wisdom to gain. This is an episode of Life on Earth, our Life on Earth show. This was a solo one that I did, episode 100, and a recap of what that entire series up through episode 100 was about. Followed by Optimism is Realism, an episode of this show that we did together. And finally, and this gets us into our topic proper, I've listed a link to Yaron Brooks' talk, and this was the closing talk at OCON 2016, entitled, some of you will recognize this title from an essay by Ayn Rand, What Can One Do?
Yep.
And Yaron Brooks discussed, what can you do? And he discussed it in terms of, well, vaguely in terms of, what can you do in a culture that's as shot as ours, a political situation that's like ours, a world that is in the condition that our, and this is 2016 he's talking about, so he's speaking about the current presidential election. It's kind of interesting to listen to that because he's talking, of course, about, see, it takes a minute to remember, Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was running for president and had some chance of actually winning. Like, what the? No. A great talk. Talk. And he made 4 main points, and all of which he discussed in some length. But he made 4 points about what can one do. And his 4 points, what he said a person can do, is learn. Now he's at OCON, so he specifically learned objectivism, learn Ayn Rand's philosophy. And he went on about that and talked about there were learning opportunities with the new, not the Graduate Center, but was it ARU at that point? Yeah.
Yeah.
The second one after learn was live. Live these ideas. Live your own best life. It's hard to sell these ideas if you're not also living them well. We'll get back to that in a minute. The third one was speak. And that, of course, comes right out of Ayn Rand's essay, What Can One Do? Because when the time is right, when it's appropriate, when you can actually be heard and you're not just in a bar yelling at someone, speak out and be articulate, which is why you have to learn the ideas first. And finally, his fourth one was support. And here he meant financial support for 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir. You can find our Patreon at robertnasir.com. Oh, no, wait, he was actually talking about the Ayn Rand Institute, but you get the idea. So, yes, support organizations that are also doing what you think needs to be done. It's a good lecture. You should listen to it. And it's kind of interesting, because if you follow Yaron Brooks, his level of kind of optimism has waxed and waned. It's gone up and down. And he was at the medium level, I think, in 2016. So it was a little more balanced, maybe. I personally think his most optimistic lectures are also his most accurate ones, but that's just me. Your mileage may vary, but the 2016 one is well worth listening to. And that second point he made about living the ideas, well, somebody asked online recently, in the John Galt line, and there were a lot of great answers, but it's a private group, so I'm not going to read those answers. And I'm not going to say the name of the guy who asked, because it is a private group. But somebody asked, well, I would just like to ask if objectivism is gaining in popularity. Well, that kind of gets back to that question of what can one do? And the way I sum it up is objectivism winning?
Yes.
Now, there's a question that gets asked a lot. I mean, I still remember, do you remember Betsy Speicher's old newsletter, Cybernet? And one of her features was, well, you'll know objectivism is winning when...
Yeah. Yeah, that always appeared after the list from David Hayes. About all the different...
things going on.
Well... No, more like
resources.
Movies to watch.
Oh,
He always
right.
put down the movies.
That's right.
Like, made a list of them. And then she would have, objectivism is winning when, and then there was something in there, some little tidbit of truth of what's happening.
Exactly. The whole trick of you'll know objectivism is winning when ... Most people would say that and they'd say, yeah, you'll know it's winning when it's the main idea being taught in all the schools. Her version of it was she would always give at the end a good news story, something showing that reason is winning out in the culture, even in some small way, some business success, whatever it was, but that had clear philosophical implications and usually in some way directly connected to objectivism. And I love that. Love that.
Yeah, there's actually, honestly, I think, speaking of honestly, there have been so many, my gosh, can you imagine, first of all, if the left just kept doubling down and just kept, eating their rationalizations and, get to the point where they really don't even care about human life anymore. a lot of people on the right will say that, and a lot of people on the left will say that about the right, and they just double down. I think that there's so much overlap, and people kind of, I've just been seeing since I don't know if it's good or bad that Trump's is in office again, but it just seems like there's more of a mashup, more people who are interested in questioning their beliefs that they currently have. And, take that, for instance, with Barry Weiss and honestly, her show, and a bunch of other people, of course, that we talk about. People on the left who are kind of leaning and kind of going towards libertarian ideas or not. But I really think, in terms of people searching for new ideas, that's never going to stop. And I think more and more people are going to be seeing Ayn Rand as, maybe we should really check her out. There was actually a good, okay, let me look this up. There was an article, that Paul Shea posted. It was on commonreader.co.uk, and it's called, is Atlas Shrugged the new vibe? The new vibe. Has there been a vibe shift toward Atlas Shrugged? And these two people are, I don't know, I forget exactly what their backgrounds are, but they're not like, I think they're both leftists. But the subhead is, it's time to take Ayn Rand seriously. And they're talking in terms of, love it or hate it, Atlas Shrugged is having a moment, and let's just read Atlas Shrugged and talk about it as a piece of literature specifically. And I haven't read the whole thing because it's really long, but yeah, it looks really promising, and the people who have read the entire thing are saying, yeah, this is a really nice piece. I mean, it's these people are not objectivists, but they are actually taking these ideas in Atlas Shrugged, like, and look at how she structures the plot, and look at how this characterization plays out, and look at, and they're talking about it like this. And so yeah, I haven't read all of it yet, but I can't wait to read all of it. But it's really cool. Love it. Love it, especially because there are people who read Ayn Rand, and some of it will slam it just because they're hateful people and they're modern people and they're lousy people. But some people slam it because they're not used to that kind of literature, and they're like, yeah, Ayn Rand, say, I like the ideas, but it's not a great book. So I love there are people who are re-examining that and willing to say, wait a minute, this is a great book. I mean, just as literature. Yeah, I mean, I'll just give you an example. This one guy says, I want to be Dagny. Yeah, well. And the one lady says, I want to be Dagny. I want to have capes, right? Damn straight. And they talk about, the scene, and she's, and they talk about the bracelet, and they talk about, Hank's wife, and, as characters. These people are talking about the characters as characters, not as, the Ayn Rand, it was just, it's the accusation of, she only wrote fiction to promote her ideology. Actually, it's reverse.
But don't we all make that mistake sometimes? And here's one of the main, maybe the main point I want to make. The question, is objectivism winning? Is Ayn Rand winning? Ayn Rand's philosophy was put up against religion and existentialism and philosophical skepticism, and it won. Oh, what do you mean it won? Well, it was put up against that in me. I read Ayn Rand's ideas, and there was a war. And there was a question of, is she winning, is she losing? And eventually, objectivism won. I'm not religious anymore. I'm not an existentialist anymore. I'm not a subjectivist anymore. That's one guy. When people say, is objectivism winning, that's not what they mean. Well, what do you think objectivism is? What do you think philosophy is? I asked ChatGPT, and ChatGPT said, philosophy is the pursuit of fundamental understanding about existence, knowledge, values, reason, the mind, and reality. Okay, I don't know if ChatGPT just forgot to mention politics and current events. Existence, knowledge, values, reason, mind, and reality. Yeah, that sounds like philosophy to me. That's what philosophy is about. Well, yeah, sure, but that's, let's ask Ayn Rand. What does Ayn Rand think philosophy is about? Okay, Ayn Rand. Philosophy is the science. I love that she regards it as a science, not the subject or the domain, but specifically a science. Philosophy is the science that studies the fundamental aspects of the nature of existence. The task of philosophy is to save the world from bad politics. No, I'm sorry. The task of philosophy is to provide man with a comprehensive view of life. And this view serves as a base, a frame of reference for all his actions, mental or physical, psychological or existential. This view tells him the nature of the universe with which he has to deal, his metaphysics, the means by which he is to deal with it, i.e. the means of acquiring knowledge, epistemology, the standards by which he is to choose his goals and values in regard to his own life and character, his ethics, and in regard to society, politics. The means of concretizing this view is given to him by aesthetics. Well, politics is in there.
Yes.
What is philosophy? What is? Let me add a word to what is philosophy. What is philosophy for? I mean, Yaron is right. You learn the philosophy, you live with the philosophy, and you speak out because we do want to save the world, or at least have whatever impact we can. Because, you may not care about politics, but politics cares about you. In other words, that stuff is going to affect your life. So, we keep up on current events, and we vote, and we speak out, and we write letters, and we do all the things. But what I run into, and I see this in real life, I mean, people in person, I see it on the internet, Facebook, the John Galt line, all these forums, and I see it on Substack and all the places. Some people, I mean, none of you would do this, but, shoe fits, wear it kind of thing. People think philosophy is for telling people how they should live, telling politicians how they should live, fighting the culture war, and then more politics and more politics.
Oh, yeah, and to make sure that you're right and not wrong.
I mean, what I see, I remember when Gary Johnson was still, you remember Gary Johnson?
I remember Gary Johnson.
He was so cool.
He was the best.
Gary Johnson is the last libertarian I remember who didn't commit the mistake of saying, people need liberty, and other than that, philosophy has nothing to say to them. Right, wrong, morals, that's all subjective, and all that matters is you leave people alone. Like, that is, I see that inversion, and not just in libertarianism these days, but the libertarians should know better. They used to know something about Ayn Rand. What is philosophy? What is philosophy for? So Yaron Brook is right when he says, one of the 4 things, what can one do, is live. Live these ideas. I've said before, you can't convince anybody that your philosophy is right if it's not leading you to success. It's one thing to say, here are a bunch of ideas that are true. It's another thing to say, here's a bunch of ideas that are good, even though I'm kind of miserable. I'm not doing very well, but my ideas are great. It's just, they're not working for me, but that's because, and then, there's a whole list of, and I'm not saying all of them are empty reasons or that you're, throwing blame, but you will be hard-pressed to convince anybody of, here's the recipe for success, if you're not at least getting something good out of it. And you're certainly not going to convince people objectivism is the right philosophy politically, and you should adopt these ideas of liberty and freedom and capitalism and free trade, if there's no evidence that you actually believe it. In you, in your life, in your presentation, in your in the way that you present these ideas.
Well, I'll tell you what, Ayn Rand's philosophy definitely won.
Yeah, she did win.
When she won, she was up against a real hardcore belief in Nietzschean existentialism.
Ooh.
And she
so
and
you wanted also to be the Uber woman.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was silly. There was so much silliness in Nietzsche. She won up against emotionalism. The emotionalism and the subjectivism and the skepticism and the cynicism found in Nietzsche. Especially the emotionalism. Oh, God, there's so much of that. And, yeah, she won.
Yeah, we talked last night about how there are other philosophers out there and other writers out there who aren't necessarily philosophers, and I do think that there is some wisdom you can get from them that you might not even be able to get from objectivism. So I wouldn't say anybody needs to, throw away their copies of, La Petite Prince or Richard Bach or anywhere else that you've gotten wisdom, Robert Heinlein. But that stuff will get you only so far. And if it was a battle between them and objectivism, I would say objectivism has won that battle for me and for you and for a lot of you out there and for thousands of people that you can find online, and undoubtedly for hundreds of thousands, millions of people who have at least been influenced by those ideas. What do we mean when we say, is objectivism winning? It's winning over and over and over. Yeah, but it's not the dominant philosophy in the culture. Oh, is that what you wanted? Okay.
So
what do you have in mind to make that happen? I mean, I would like, Led Zeppelin to be the dominant music in the culture, but that's not going to happen. For some reason, I can't make that happen. It would be a better world if it did, but I'm not able to achieve that. I'm not going to let that get me down. The reason why I'm not going to let that get me down, other than that it's a frivolous example, is that all I've got to do is turn on my stereo and put on my favorite Led Zeppelin album, and Led Zeppelin won. They won in that moment. They won that day. And they got to have a massive impact on my state of mind in that moment, my level of inspiration and energy and enthusiasm and motivation. Ayn Rand keeps winning over and over and over and over again. Yeah, I get it. I totally get. I want more freedom. There are regulations that stop me from doing things. There are taxes I pay that stop me from doing things. There are all sorts of things going on out there that stop me from doing things. So, yes, I certainly wish that the dominant philosophy out there was objectivism. But all that said, no, objectivism keeps winning every freaking day. And in ways that just leave me with kind of an overwhelming sense of gratitude.
Yes.
I cannot help but be thankful for these ideas. And, not just, if I'd ever got to meet Ayn Rand, I'd want to give her the world's biggest hug, but everybody involved in this philosophy, all of you good people out there that I get to have these conversations with, both during the show and online. And
yeah, and there are other good thinkers out there. There's, what was her name? I'm forgetting now. It's Hannah or Anna? Hannah? I don't know. There's just a lot of really good ideas out there. And you can quote them, from one source to another source to another source. And they're really, really good.
Yeah, if you're talking about liberty, you maybe think of Hannah Arendt.
Yeah, Arendt. I didn't know how to say her last name.
That's because there's a silent D at the end that's only partially silent.
Yeah, you've got, Frederick Douglass, and you have, Voltaire, who's one of my favorites. You have all these really excellent ideas out there, but no one actually sat down and asked themselves, let's put together a logical, comprehensive philosophy based on reason. No one's ever done that before. Why don't I do this? I mean, that was, of course, part of Ayn Rand's goals for herself, and that was a huge accomplishment for her. Strangely enough, it wasn't her intended goal. Her intended goal was to come up with what she thought was the ideal man, the ideal woman, and actually writing fiction and actually writing novels. The philosophy part was to help her write that fiction. But no one up until objectivism, no one actually sat down and thought. Now, I got to say, when I was a teenager, I had thought of doing this. I wanted to become a philosopher. I was going to be a Nietzschean existentialist. And I was going to make sense of all the philosophy that came up that I had ever read. And I read actually quite a bit of philosophy in my teenage years. And it wasn't until I was 16 that I discovered Ayn Rand, but it took me a few years to really have this understanding that, wait a minute, no, she actually has done the work here. She's done the work that I want to do. So it was really amazing. And so is his objectivism winning? Of course it is. It's reality based. Anything that is good, rational, I don't know, name an adjective, wholesome, healthy, psychologically healthy, anything like this is consistent with objectivism. And so of course it's winning.
Yes.
And it will continue to, it'll continue to influence more and more people. It's really skyrocketed. I mean, we've been in objectivism, Robert and I, for 30 years, and the growth has been exponential. With the internet, of course, but with the efforts of the Ayn Rand Institute, and it's just going to get better. So expect that.
Yeah. Now I've got a bit of a weakness that I'll bring up in just a moment. But in that thread about objectivism, the guy who said, is objectivism gaining in popularity? My initial answer was that, well, it's not gaining in popularity much. You can run the numbers. Somebody put in a list of, for example, Google searches, where Ayn Rand searches were going down and Jordan Peterson searches were going up. I don't know that that's the best measure, but yeah, it's not gaining that much in popularity, but it's also not declining in popularity. And just the book sales will tell you that. And it continues to reach new audiences, new people altogether. A lot of the people I see in the chat I know are younger people. And, Yaron Brooks' number of subscribers are rising every month. And so new people are being reached. And you can say, well, but those are, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, and that's not the kind of numbers I'm looking for. Every one of those persons, every one of those people is somebody whose mind was reached, whose life was improved. And some people will stick with it, some people won't. Every single one of those is an impact. And to be honest, I care more about the individuals than I do about the aggregate. So, I thought it was important to make the point. The primary purpose of objectivism, the primary purpose of philosophy in general, is not political and it's not cultural. The politics and the culture in aggregate. The primary purpose of philosophy is to provide a comprehensive framework for understanding and guiding your own life. Now, I know enough of you individuals, enough people, and yeah, you have a political impact, you have a cultural impact. And it's not that doesn't matter, but it's derivative. And it should not be affecting your own personal success, your own career success, your own thriving, your own happiness, any more than absolutely necessary. And I mean that exactly the way that I said it. Yaron, back in 2016, made the point. He runs into objectivists all the time who say, well, I can't do what I want. I can't succeed in business. There's too much oppression. There's too much regulation. There's too many ways in which I can't achieve success in life. And Yaron didn't shrug that off. He said that there are certainly career areas in which it's really hard because of government or because of the culture. And it may be that the number one thing you want to do, you can't do, not today. And maybe you have to pick your number two choice. But it is absolutely a mistake, and one that there is no reason to make, to say, well, the culture is so shot, or politics are so oppressive, I'm not even going to try. I can't achieve success in this way. I can't do it. Don't let that happen to you. Or if you have friends, don't let that happen to them. If you have family, if you have anybody who's at all interested in living a decent life. The purpose of philosophy, again, is not to solve political problems. That's in there. The purpose of philosophy is to give a framework for you to live your own best life. And for everybody who has learned anything about philosophy, particularly those of you who've learned something about Ayn Rand and objectivism, to the extent you have then made decisions guided by rational ideas and found any success at all, hell yes, objectivism is winning. And it can keep winning, and that is entirely up to you. No, you can't change the whole culture, although you can have your little impact. And you can have the biggest impact by letting philosophy have the biggest impact on you. You not only are then able better to speak of philosophy, you are a beacon, you are a lighthouse, you are a light, you are an example. And you will convince much more by how happy you are, by how successful you are, not even necessarily in terms of dollars and cents, by that sparkle in your eye, by the fact that you are a little more awake, a little more aware, a little more alive than the people who just do what everybody else does. And they may be happy, not too happy. And they may be successful, although not necessarily too successful. That sparkle, that twinkle in your eye. I remember, and maybe I've told this story before I was a highly paid information technology professional, I used to work in fast food restaurants. I was a manager of a Hardee's restaurant. And I would get the kids, some of them were adults, who worked with me, usually the smarter ones, who would ask me, why are you happy all the time? We work in a fast food restaurant, which they assumed would attract the most miserable people. Why are you happy? And it would usually be connected to the kinds of things I wasn't preaching philosophy, just the kinds of things I would say, just being a rational and happy person. And so, well, a lot of it has to do with what I believe about life. And then, some of them I would actually get to share Ayn Rand with. And you want that. You want people to look at you and say, I want some of what he's got.
Yes.
Even if you're not rich or driving a fancy car or wearing custom clothing or whatever it is. The question is, when life gives you lemons, you see, I was going to get to the lemon shirt, right? When life throws lemons at you, are you like, yeah, life sucks. Life's throwing this crap at me. Or do you say, oh, free lemons, I can capitalize on that. I know what to do when life throws things at me. So is objectivism winning over and over and over again? Hell yes, it's winning.
It's won so many battles for me in my life. Not just, I started out, when I was 13 years old, I would say that I was heading down because I was raised Catholic, heading towards atheism by the time I was 15. Before I knew about Ayn Rand, I had a lot of, not a lot actually, but I had a good amount compared to other 14 and 15-year-olds. I knew a heck of a lot, just because I considered myself an active thinker, or a free thinker, as I would have said, or somebody who was actually interested in ideas and understanding things, figuring things out, untangling ideas, trying to find the answers to all of these really difficult questions. Not just moral questions, not just political questions, but philosophical questions. I untangled a lot without the help of Ayn Rand. But by the time, I was 16 and I discovered her and I started reading her fiction, oh my gosh, she saved my life so many times. I literally saved my life so many times. I'll just say I was in an abusive situation when I was a teenager, and I won't go into any of the story, but I remember I had to run out of a house, and I chose to run out of the house with my keys, of course, and I also took my pillow with me. But I grabbed my Atlas Shrugged book, my old beat up paperback, and because I knew that was at that time, that was so helpful to me in my thinking, and I started coming around to the idea that what, life doesn't suck. Life isn't all suffering and mitigating suffering and all this BS. Life isn't just fighting, the evil. There are values out there to pursue. And that's something, golly, I didn't know. I had no clue what that actually meant, to actually find something rational and healthy and helpful to my life, something that was life-affirming. Boy, other than the kinds of concepts that you would find in religion, I didn't find that anywhere. I didn't find that in Nietzsche, for goodness sake. It was all just a lot of negativity there. So I actually found a positive view of life. And Ayn Rand and her writings and in objectivism, it really taught me the value of, the three cardinal values in objectivism, which is reason. Second one is purpose, and self-esteem is the third one. And especially the issue of self-esteem, it was extremely helpful for me to learn about that and to use it in practice and to develop my own self-worth. Because I know I would not have been able to do that without Ayn Rand's writings and her explaining to me what that actually meant. So, objectivism has won. And, we talk about things like I mentioned to Robert recently. I'm like, I really think that there needs to be some workbooks on objectivism, or companions, say, to philosophy who needs it, or the virtue of selfishness, or a workbook even as a companion to Atlas Shrugged or The Fountainhead. Similar to what has been done with this, there's an Artist's Way. There's a self-help book called The Artist's Way by Julie Cameron, and I'm sure there's other workbooks out there that would be helpful in kind of taking that model and applying it to objectivism. That's certainly, I think that definitely needs to be done. But look at what objectivism has done for you in your thinking. For me, it has kept me away from toxic and even physically abusive people in my life. It has, so it has definitely helped me in avoiding the disvalues, but especially it has helped me in pursuing the values. And without that, these, I can't even tell you how awful my life would have been without that. So just extend that out to yourself. Ask yourself how it has helped you. Make it crystal clear in your mind how these ideas, how philosophy has helped you. And then you can extend that out to the culture. Like the article I was just talking about, the people actually taking Atlas Shrugged as a novel seriously. Extend that out and realize that psychology definitely would not be as good as it is right now. Cognitive behavioral therapy would not be as good. Ayn Rand definitely had an impact on that. And of course, she has had impacts in politics. I think politics would be tremendously worse than it would be without Ayn Rand. You may think, oh my gosh, it's really bad. But I really think that there has been a leash put on politics, on the bad politics, because of Ayn Rand. People have hesitated and paused and reflected and thought, what, maybe we shouldn't be doing more of this, or, going forth with it. So, Christopher said it saved my childhood spirit. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and Akira asks, do you still have that copy of Atlas Shrugged? I do. It's all in tatters, and it's in a bag. It's in a plastic bag, being kept safe, because the binding broke on it. So, so.
Yeah, we got a few of those old paperbacks where the binding is now covered in wide, transparent tape.
Yes.
The book covers were saved by being taped over.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's funny because we've also got, actually I was going to have it for show and tell during the show here. We've also got a first edition of Atlas Shrugged that's worth, I don't know how many hundreds of dollars. And so, yeah, we've got our old stuff just for memory's sake.
Yes. So I know the chat's been a little wonky tonight.
Yeah. Well, we got trolled a bit, and that's always fun.
Yeah, that's always fun.
I always say, if nobody gives you a hard time, then you're not pushing boundaries. You must not be doing anything. So
thank you, Troll, for stopping by. Go in and I wish you the best and keep reading.
Yes. And one of the comments in there was that I have not said anything, what was it, interesting or important? I love that, because that means you are already where I want people to go. So congratulations.
Yes.
For you. If for you I have said nothing of any value tonight, that's a good thing. It means you already know it. And more power to folks. Seriously, whatever comes at you in life, it's really up to you how you frame that, how you understand it. And yeah, if somebody says, you've never said a damn interesting thing in your life, I'd be like, that's great. You must be an extremely interesting person because you're already there. Incidentally, for those of you who find that idea of an objectivism or philosophy workbook compelling in the style of Julia Cameron, Tal Zafani's done that.
Well, he has the happiness team.
Yeah, which has a workbook as part of the program.
It does have a workbook.
Now, it's a little different, I think, than what, Amy, you and I would produce.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't... He gets right to values. He doesn't spend a lot of time on the philosophy part of it. And maybe his approach is the superior approach, but I suspect we'd be a little fingers in the philosophy a little more.
Yeah,
His work is
yeah.
consistent with the philosophy, and it's probably the right way to go. I just think we would do it a little differently. So anyway, if you're interested in that, definitely do take a look at Tal Safani's work. His website is myhappiness.team, which at some point .team became a TLD, a top-level domain. So myhappiness.team. And it looks like the website's a little outdated. I don't know if he's done any sessions in the last few months, but look him up and you'll find that information there. I have a copy of the workbook. It can be very valuable for values clarification and for goal setting and for a number of other things. So more power to him for that.
Yeah, and thank you, Akira. Yes, I do have a lot of patience because I know. I mean, if I'm glad I discovered Ayn Rand the way that I did. It was on my French teacher's shelf, and it was The Virtue of Selfishness. And I was, into Nietzsche, and he talked about selfishness. And I'm like, oh, it's a book about Nietzsche. And I looked at it, and I'm like, this is not about Nietzsche. And I was excited. I was thrilled to find something that I hadn't discovered yet in Ayn Rand, thankfully.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you what, in the mid to late 80s, she was not in encyclopedias yet. By the way, that's what you would do to learn about different philosophies in that time period. Go to a library, you would find the Encyclopedia Britannica, and you look under philosophy, and you see what was listed.
Yeah. Actually, Britannica's online, and it's in my show notes here. In fact, I'm going to go through the show notes real quick, and then we'll wrap. But, yeah, I love the quote. Now, I don't regard trolls in the chat to be enemies. They're just friends we haven't met yet. But,
right.
But I love the quote, you have enemies? Good. That means you stood up for something sometime in your life. Often gets attributed to Churchill, but it's actually from Victor Hugo. One of his characters says that. You have enemies? Good. That means you've stood up for something sometime in your life. So maybe that means I've stood up for something sometime in my life, or maybe I really am just not. I have nothing to offer this particular person.
Gary
Either
says,
way.
Gary, by the way, who we've met in person, is a great guy. I hope to see you again soon, Gary. He says on this eve, of the inauguration, the topic of winning was especially poignant. Superlative show, guys.
Well,
Thank you.
He might also be talking about the Lions last night. Oh.
Well, I mean, somebody had to
Detroit
lose.
Lions.
I don't know. Sports ball.
Sport ball. It was sad.
Well,
sad. We didn't actually watch the game because we had Great Lakes Objectivists last night.
Yes,
and thank you to everybody who came for pasta night.
Pasta night.
Pasta night. Well, it wasn't just pasta, but
Oh, you know what? We should have brought out we have it up on our bookshelf, but we've got the Pastafanarian Flying Spaghetti Monster book.
That's true. We do have the Flying Spaghetti Monster book. Folks, if you look at the show notes, you're going to see links to the things that I mentioned earlier, including the 100th episode of Life on Earth. But also, I did ask ChatGPT what is philosophy, and I've included the prompt for that. You can read that as well as Ayn Rand's answer in the Ayn Rand lexicon on what is philosophy. Philosophy, Who Needs It? The book obviously has the answer to that. And again, if you're just convinced philosophy is primarily about A, arguing with people, and B, saving the world in terms of politics, it's time to give Philosophy, Who Needs It another read, another listen. You can do that either way. And there's a link to Betsy Speicher's old classic feature, You'll Know Objectivism is Winning When.
Oh, wow, there's a link to that still?
Yeah, well, it's the link that I put in has examples because it's actually Betsy Speicher's interview on Prodos' old radio show and podcast.
Wow.
And they do talk about that. So pretty cool. There's also a link to HB Letter, Harry Binswanger's forum, and Meeting of the Minds, which I listened to this morning and usually do on Sunday mornings if I can. And finally, if all of this sounds a little vague and you're like, no, I want something more specific, Robert's not saying anything important or interesting. The final link in the show notes is Gina Gorland's Ocon 2017 talk.
Yes.
Using Reason to Cultivate Passion, a moral and psychological how-to guide. Do give that a listen. Because one of the things I want from each and every one of you, what I want for each and every one of you is more reason, more rationality in your lives. But even more than that, if it's possible for there to be an even more than that, what I want for each and every one of you is more passion in your life. I want you to have values, and I want you to experience those values. Do give that talk by Gina Gorlin a listen, Using Reason to Cultivate Passion, a moral and psychological how-to guide. Folks, that's it. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, and thanks for having a fun chat.
Yeah.
This was fun. And there's a lot of good ideas in here. Christopher mentions Benjamin Franklin, that he was buddies with Voltaire. Yes. And it's great.
I do very much appreciate the compliments, despite our unhappy friend who wasn't getting much out of the show. He got something out of it. It wouldn't be worth entering the chat if there was nothing going on there. The rest of you awesome people, you really are the best audience in podcasting, and we do not take that for granted. Thank you very much. Doubly so, the folks who are patrons, Patreon users of the show. If you are sending us a couple dollars every month, thank you for that. You keep the lights on and you keep us motivated.
Yes.
Any suggestions for future episodes?
I have
Send
one.
them.
I have one.
What do you have?
I'm going to have a sorry, I was reading the chat. Next Sunday, I promise to bring my first copy of Atlas Shrugged, and you can judge for yourself how many times I read it, because there's a lot.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, Narendra's in on the chat. He says, objectivism allowed me to expand my interests. Almost everything in basics. It increases a sense of wonder.
Yeah, it does.
I love the concept of wonder.
Oh.
He says, first-hand happiness, energy. Also, it lets one be relating to all. Be positive and try new things in work. Life becomes an adventure.
You know what? You know what completely turned me against cynicism was reading The Romantic Manifesto by Ayn Rand.
Yes.
Oh my God! I mean,
yeah,
it's so good. And I'm luckily I'm rereading it again.
I always say it frustrates me that Tony Robbins used a line which I wish I had originated during his old talks in the old days, like 20 years ago or whenever it was. He would end every talk with 3 words. He would say, "Live with passion." And I love that. I love that line in the film Serendipity.
Yes.
Where, the Greeks didn't leave obituaries. They only asked one question after a man died. Did he have passion? Love that. Folks, I wish you reason, rationality, in order that you can have enormous passion for your values. Live them. Live large, live big, live bold. Don't let the politics and the culture war get you down. Fight them. Stay informed, stay interested. Do what you can, but don't try to do any more than you can. And once you've done everything you can, let it go. Live your own best damn life you can. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. We wish you every success that you so richly deserve.
Thank you for joining us. Oh my goodness.
And that is why, on top of everything else, we wish you love.